name is Nate. My name is Nate McDonough. I'm the guy whose house Emil is staying at. I do comics. I live in Pittsburgh, and I read Dr. Murder and the Island of Death for the second time recently, and it made quite an impression on me the first time, and the second time I took very detailed notes. I have the opportunity to speak to Emil today. Emil today, the author of the book. Let's get it into it, man. It's an extremely ambitious first book. You're dealing with some pretty meaty themes in there.
Yeah.
Tell us more about really swinging for the bleachers. It seems like you felt comfortable doing it, but what was it like making your first book?
Well, it was sort of like I've kind of followed that kind of unwritten rule that you give cartoonists when they're just starting out, that whatever you do, only make it twice as long as the last thing you did. And I pretty much stuck to it, I found. So like, last time I was here, before I made this book, I finished up a 60-page comics, kind of in the same genre of pulpy, feely, existential stuff. So yeah, that was 60 pages, and then going from that to 96 pages, I kind of had a sense of the scale I wanted to go for.
Is it just me, or is that very European, stopping at 96 pages? Because I feel like any one of us would have made 4 pages of something to get in there. This is my 100-page story.
Yeah.
It's instantly evident that it's more than a superhero comic, but the title is a very pulpy one indeed. And it's very coy. It's funny. I feel like the title does some cool stuff even before you crack open the cover. Kind of winds up your imagination. What made you select Dr. Murder and the Island of Death?
Well, so the thing is, this was actually my thesis project from my bachelor program in making comics. And prior to starting on it, we were supposed to come up with 3 ideas that we were really excited about and wanted to turn into a longer comic. And so I had my 3 ideas. One of them was about lizard people. One of them was about 2 kids growing up in the countryside. And the last one was, I can't remember. But anyways, none of the ideas I originally had was Dr. Murder. I was just sitting and doodling at my table, being my cranky self when nothing's going like I wanted it to, because I wasn't really, I had developed these ideas for perhaps the past half year before I was supposed to start on one of them, and I just sort of lost the momentum of those ideas. And so I was just sitting and doodling, and I drew this dude with a machine gun and an island in the background, and I was like, Dr. Murder and the Island of Death. That sounds stupid. And that was the impetus, or that was the catalyst for the whole story, because at that time we were being taught by Steven T. Seagal, who did It's a Bird and Sandman Mystery Theater. And he came up to me and asked, well, why don't you just do that one? That looks cool. And I was like, well, can I? I mean, I've just done a drawing. All right, I can. and I think through making this book, one thing that I've learned is that there is no perfect idea. There is just a idea or an idea. And as long as you stick to it and finish it, it's gonna be good.
It strikes me as a mature instinct to maybe get like half or 2/3 of the way through a book and then just decide that it's not clicking or it's not going to work, exactly, and abandon it despite the dozens of hours you poured into it. Speaking of which, you're 22, you mentioned earlier?
No, now I'm 25. I was 22 when I did it last.
Well, of course, you're still extremely young, and what strikes me about Dr. Murder, and you've been working on it for a couple years now, right?
it took about, like, on and off, I've been working on it for 2 years.
It was a shock to me when I thought, like, my young friend Emil has created this book about where one of the early lines in the book that registered with me was life is pure maintenance, and the story seems to be constructed a lot around regret and
like a midlife crisis.
yeah, right. And then it's an extremely fun book. I don't want to give away too much of the book, and I don't want to suggest that it's I don't know, mired in the pathos of just the tragedy of like entering your midlife and just being a
not that it is
sad, lonely guy. But it's fantastic. The let's come up with a question real quick. I see a man attempting to reconcile himself to mediocrity and having a difficult time negotiating his late midlife. How did you work so comfortably on such a subject at your current age? It is shocking to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's just that as you start to grow up, you start to realize these patterns that repeat all the time in life, in relationships and your everyday life, and how. Yeah, I feel like one of the central themes of the book is that like you're always gonna fuck up no matter what. There's gonna come a point where you're too confident or too arrogant, and then you fuck up, and then you restart the whole process of building yourself up again until you fuck up again, and just how inevitable that whole process is. I feel like it's something most people go through on a daily basis, and it's been something that's been more and more apparent to me as you move away from home, you start dealing with all your life or financial problems on your own and so on and so forth. It's just life is pretty reckless, or relentless is the word I'm looking for.
I don't want to waste all this time just gassing you up, even though I'd like to, because we've got this great opportunity, but I would like to mention one more time that you talk about how you fuck up and you're trying to deal with it, and you talk about how people deal with this on a daily basis, and you leave your parents' house and it's just one catastrophe after another. Personally, I thought that I was an absolute genius and that I could do no wrong until I was roughly 27 or 28. So I remain very impressed by your outlook in the book and in general.
Or by my capacity to fuck up, maybe.
The marvelous magnitude of your fuck up.
Yes.
They can be recognized by all. The uncomfortable, the character is so uncomfortable in his own skin and has such a great deal of self-loathing. Do you relate at all to this, to Dr. Murder?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Murder is like, it's kind of, I've kind of tried to exorcise my ego from myself by putting it into that book, but Dr. Murder is definitely a big part of me. It's that, yeah, it's my ego who is incredibly insecure at times, but then, going through those phases of being built up, because it's like, because he is also good at what he does, presumably. We don't really see what his job actually entails in this. It's just an existential route throughout the book, but he has like a certain reputation, and people know who he is, and people probably respect him a lot more than he thinks they do, which is one of his bigger failings, is that he underestimates how much other people respect him.
I know that one of the huge pleasures for me in making comics, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, and it sounds like you enjoy this too, but you can take these undesirable facets of your character and spin them out into a character. I noticed that Dr. Murder, for all of his faults and shortcomings, the thing that stands out to me as like the most like repulsive element of his character is that he treats his friends so poorly, but it's in a funny way. It's hilarious where he just abandons his what's his name again? The guy Skull Person. He's an absolute heel to Skull Person, and I can tell you really relish him just like torturing his friend. Do you enjoy writing a heel? I guess clearly you do because you made a whole book about one. But what is it that makes you want to write a heel?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think it's just some of the authors I really like are sort of delve into that same character, like David Sedaris. To a certain extent, Jon Ronson is also kind of a dick, and I just really like that the voice that they can get away with just because they're being honest about themselves. Then they can kind of get away with being dicks or morons. So yeah, just that the honesty there is in writing a hero character.
Yeah, I feel like I relate to a frightening extent being a dick and a moron, but like passing myself as a socially excusable individual from day to day. Yeah, right on.
And it's also, I feel what it is about Dr. Murder that makes you maybe a bit more sympathetic to him is that he's just living in this bubble of his own fantasies of success and failure that sort of insulates him from interacting with the outside world in any like meaningful way.
I guess to jarringly shift subjects, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the art in the story. You've got a pretty unique and exciting style. I would describe it as energetic and muscular. Especially the way you draw elements, the way you'll draw lava bursting from a volcano, a bomb exploding, just great gusts of air and clouds and water, all seem to be pretty present in the book and are a treat to look at. Do you have any type of opinion or insight about your approach to drawing just elemental forces?
Drawing the elements. I feel there is, I don't want to spell it out too much, but I feel there is something, or I wanted to do something. Speaking of art, I just wanted to show that it's a really beautiful world that Dr. Murder lives in, to kind of provide that contrast with how miserable it is.
And he's completely trapped in his own successes and failures to even notice.
Trapped in that cycle of imagining success, imagining failure, while completely ignoring everything that's around him. And it's like he lives on a beautiful island.
The island of death.
The island of death.
Yeah, right on.
I just want to make a comment. I feel like that's really shown strongly on that one page where he's like flying by the dolphins.
Yeah.
Fuck you!
Exactly. Pretty much.
Yeah.
You also got a pretty exciting depiction of music in the book. I was very fond of the... How do you feel about drawing dancing and music in a book? I know it's something a lot of artists struggle with, but you seem to be pretty slick at it.
Well, thank you. Dancing and music, well, as far as the effects of the music, I just really enjoy playing around with the lettering and doing these effects in the book. Dancing and music, I don't know. I mean, there is a point with one of the characters who's like dancing carelessly, and it's like, it shows someone being very present in a moment.
The highest level one can achieve is dancing with abandon without self-consciousness.
Yeah. And very hard to attain even on a dance floor with great music.
I know I've seen you dance with abandon before, Emil. I've witnessed it. We were at this, there was some like nightclub downtown where they have like, the window was totally open and you could just like step in through it instead of like going in through the door. But they had these like translucent floor tiles with like sick-looking koi. He's kind of wiggling around underneath. And it was me and Emil and our friend Catherine when she was in town. But anyways, I guess I got a whole bunch of questions, but I'll just wind it down with a super, probably frustratingly broad general one. Because I have to compress you to a two-dimensional caricature of a guy from Europe all the time is my inclination. But what do you see as pros and cons of comics in America?
Of comics in America. Well, I think the environment for it is definitely like the community that I found, at least in Pittsburgh, around. Well, so the community I found, or the communities I found in the U.S. around making comics have been like really tight and really, caring about fostering that community and fostering cartooning and sort of widening that culture, which I don't find as much as back home. But then back home in Denmark, what you have there, which you don't have here, is a very supportive government, like that can provide government funding and does all of these, supports all of these festivals and workshops and stuff.
America has a comics artist per capita problem right now. We're trying to do something about it, but there's just so many, we don't even know how to handle it.
Couldn't find them all.
Sir, what is next?
What is next? Well, next up, I just, like 4 hours before I went on the plane to go to Baltimore last week, I sent the final print files for the next comic, which so far is only coming out in Danish. It's called Reservation, and it's like not a pre-apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic, but a genuine apocalyptic book, which takes place some 100 years in the future when mankind has just started developing a colony on Mars, and meanwhile the ocean levels have risen, so there's these huge barren landscapes outside of Copenhagen full of shipwrecks, and Copenhagen is like a walled off city while they like send off their rockets to Mars. So it's a book about that sort of looks at people as cells or as parts of a cell, and how you have people in a domain crossing into another domain, causing change and causing something else to be expelled from that domain. So that's the next book that I finished. The next book that I want to make is something more along the lines of Dr. Murder, something that plays around with genre tropes from genre comics. It's going to be called Ultra Pulp.
Yeah? I don't know how he figured out American genres better than I'd ever managed to, but he's an amazing fella. Emil, thank you for taking this time to speak with us.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you.